My name's Frank Francis. I'm an amateur enthusiast rather than a professional photographer, and I'm a journalist by profession, and I think that probably informs quite a bit of my work. Not really a series, although there's, I guess, some connections between them, but they're just a selection of images that I picked out as reflecting the kind of the way I approach my photography. And I guess you could say they're kind of slightly random in nature. I look for the kind of quirky side of pictures, taking things, taking pictures of people from behind rather than in front, and just looking for interesting juxtapositions. And so the picture involving the picture with the trainers in it, which is the one you can see, was kind of really not something which I took by design. I was just, that's often the way I work. I just stroll around seeing what people are doing. And I was actually looking for pictures of bikes, cyclists going along the pier, and had positioned myself at the back of one of the kind of huts along the seafront in Hastings, and hadn't realised actually that there was a person sitting inside the hut until I'd kind of started framing up the camera and saw the kind of the trainers poking out, and it just appealed to me. Nothing particularly spectacular about it. I kind of like the ordinariness of images, and this was a case in point.
The first one on the left side was taken in Syria in 2012, and when I took this picture, I knew it will be one of the most important picture I've taken, and I knew it would be very important, and I kept it for years till now. When I saw this geometric Arabian pattern on the window in front of this light, I knew it will be very important. And the second picture is in my living room in St. Leonard's here, and I took it 2020. And putting these two big images next to each other helped me to see my life as a continuous line rather than just separated parts without any connection between them, because that's how I used to see my life. But I think introducing these images together build a kind of connection between the past and the present. Sightline project is a photography project, was supervised and monitored by the amazing photographer and artist Nicole Zarura. And during this project, we explored several aspects of photography, and even through the lockdown, we continued this project, and this project brought me with my friends to Photohastings to summer photographic exhibition. This is a nice way to end the project.
Hi, my name is Derek Cottrell. This is my work. It's about the moon, which has inspired philosophers and artists since man could first walk and look up and wonder. Originally it's going to be 3 pieces called Moon Imagined, Moon Observed and Moon Inferred. But I realised it probably didn't work. The moon inferred was the trick of light, and the moon observed was down at pet level, and the moon imagined was one which made me think that maybe it was more Japanese and maybe more Zen than I first imagined. So I tied it up with a poem which I've written a few years ago, which is a poem to give me hope. And I believe the three pictures tie up with the three lines of the poem. And the moon knows how to shine. It always has. Illumined, the moon knows how to shine. It always does. So the work is a photographic tresset. It's called a tresset of light. And the tresset is a three-line poem. And it ties up to a three-line poem which I wrote a few years ago, which at a time when I wanted hope.
My name's Jeremy Llewellyn-Jones. I've got two pieces in the show. One is called Shipwrecked and one is called For Those in Peril. They were made in Greece in 2019. They were kind of originally almost holiday snaps, although done on a tripod and thought about. But they've turned into something later on, which is more about the idea that we go to the seaside, go to the beach for recreation, for holiday, but actually the sea is powerful, it's malevolent, it can be stormy, it can be difficult, and it can kill. And out of that I've sort of moved on to developing the project, which will be about the highways that the sea is. If you travel by sea, you follow particular routes. It's like going on a motorway, like going on an M1. If you cross the Atlantic, there are particular ways of doing it. And some of the most ancient routes were discovered way, way, way before anyone thought they were, kind of tens of thousands of years ago. So people would navigate by memory, by tide, by the position of the moon, without instruments, and in particular just out of habit, so crossing island to island. So these two images are basically the start of a project that will continue at some point. For the picture called Shipwrecked, I was standing in the water with a tripod in the water with waves lapping up underneath the camera pretty closely. It's a long exposure and I'm moving the camera, and if I remember rightly I was actually zooming very slightly on a zoom lens. It's all a bit of an experiment. But it did feel as though I was very much a part of the elements in the water, fighting the water, trying to control the water. You just get a little bit of a flavour of its power and its malevolence.
My name's Sinéid. I'm an artist, and I use photography. I use photographs as objects, really. I'm interested in the photograph as an object. This piece of work, this installation is called pause, look. And it's about stopping and looking and experiencing. And I make installations because I'm curious about finding things in the work, about exploring the work. For me, curiosity is really one of the most important elements of my practice. It's the thing that drives me to sort of try new things, experiment new things, bring different materials together and different sensations together, I suppose.
I'm Patty Webb, or Patricia Webb, and my image is called Storm Approaching. Well, I'd only just moved down to Hastings, so I was really amazed by the skies and the seas. Down from London, suddenly the world opens back up again. And I was out on the pier, and it was a very sunny day, quite bland, whatever, had my camera with me. And then suddenly, from the distance, you could literally see this storm slowly approaching. And it was so dark. I mean, it was just magnificent. So all I did was I was like herring up the steps of the pier to try and find myself a place exactly where I wanted to get it from. I think I only took 3, maybe 4 shots of it and managed to get the vanishing point, which was just, from my point of view, it was like, how did I do that? You know, it's one of those moments where everything just clicks into place and you've got an image that I was so proud of it. So that was it. And then 2 minutes later, the rain hammered down. You see something like a cloud of that intensity approaching. If I was a farmer in medieval times, for example, that would have been important. That would have been my sign that life might end tomorrow, you know. Or if I was really practical, I would know that that meant it's about to pour with rain, you know. And I think us as human beings, because we're so intense on controlling our environments, controlling everything around us, we think somehow that we can control the weather. And of course we can't, as we're seeing now, as we're seeing with the extreme weather that we're getting all over the world. And I just think this image for me just says, look, you know, just look, it's coming. You just have to look up and you'll see it. And I don't think we do enough noticing and looking up and taking note of what's coming our way.
Good afternoon, my name's Chris Coombes and the title of my work is the Rye Harbour Nature Reserve, which is at Winchelsea, East Sussex. My passion is one of nature, and I'm fascinated by the isolation of the beautiful countryside in East Sussex. And for this body of work, I focused on the Rye Harbour Nature Reserve, primarily because it's so desolate, so wide open spaces, and that serene quietness, a place where you can walk, understand, listen and look. I chose to create the images in black and white mainly to strip away the distraction of colour. Colour can sometimes be too dominant, whereas looking at the scene here, the isolation, the open spaces, black and white with the tonality that it actually provides, I think actually enhances that feeling, and hopefully that is something that comes across to the viewer.
My name is Rod Morris and my image in the show is entitled San Francisco 1989. The image is from a trip I made across the States in the summer of 1989. I initially went there for work and ended up traveling, buying a car and driving from New York to Vancouver, and then traveled down by plane the west coast to San Francisco. And this image I've never actually printed before. I've scanned it and used it in online exhibitions, but I've never actually made a physical print out of it. So it was great to be able to do that for the first time. And I'm really interested in the image because there's a lot of stories that emanate from it. As I mentioned in my text in the book, for me, photographs are like vessels, and they contain stories that each of us can relate to in different ways. And I like photographs that are open-ended and that are not constrained by time or place, but allow us all to have multiple readings of those images that maybe relate to our own experiences.
This is Face to the Dawn. It's a self-portrait. I have the fortunate home history to live and work in a house that is a suffragette shop, or was a suffragette shop 110 years ago. I was so delighted to find out this fact and felt that the energy of the place really was feeding into my work in some kind of way. I've always been interested in social history. My work is political at times and often feminist. Two women owned my house, Edith Bowerman and Elsie Bowerman, and they were militant suffragettes. They set up this shop. They were the most incredible women. They went down on the Titanic, they went down on the Titanic and were rescued. The history of the house, the studio, is so rich. This celebrates not just their story, but it also celebrates, in a way, or marks the new act that's coming through that allows violence against women. I think the Labour Party decided that the female protesters who were going to be also treated quite brutally by the police, they said they're not going to vote for that. But the the rest of the act is so authoritarian and draconian that it's actually reminding me so much of the sort of brutality against the suffragettes. And we won't be able to protest against climate change or against all manner of things that are going on with our economy if we can't protest. And I feel so strongly about that. And I think the suffragettes that lived in my house and owned the shop were militant enough to make a statement. This is my meagre statement to try and uphold their history. So how can our voice be heard? It's interesting that this accidentally happened and she hasn't got a voice in this. She's got a flash of light came through the window and her face looks like she can't talk. So this is the one I chose for the exhibition.